Yeah. Or it's,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Hello, my name's, I mentioned Jonathan Greer. I'm from Queen's University. So I'm here to tell the story over the last number of years of our research data management journey. So in many ways, you could say after listening to Edinburgh and London, this is the results from the Belfast jury. Uh, so again, much following similar patterns to be talking about how we begin our research data management response, looking at our policy infrastructure, what frameworks and practice we have, and the challenges and risks with all in this. And much like the two previous speakers, our journey largely started out in 3 years ago. No surprise with that. Again, it was the mandate largely from the Engineering and Physical Sciences Council to state that within 3 years, which is starting from next month, that you need to have processes in place. So that while Edinburgh had started early, it was really, to be honest, that mandate from that council that started the process going. The Queen's University receives substantial money from that council, so obviously didn't want to create any tensions there. And it's quite interesting that council was one of the last of the research councils to have their policy in place for this. Some of the other councils had already been operating that, but interestingly, their processes were based on the level of the individual researcher, whereas the EPSRC made the change of they put the onus on the institution. So in effect, that got everyone's ears raised and said, okay, well, let's do something. And at that time, in 3 years ago, they said we have to develop a roadmap and publish a roadmap and send that to the Research Council. And I drafted a beautiful strategy, which is summarised here, of which we would raise awareness during this period and identify best practice and do an audit and develop policies and guidance and disseminate practice, infrastructure, appoint staff. Yeah, okay. That has been the plan, and some of this has not been straightforward to say the least. And I'd say by next month we'll have got there. But in terms of these plans, I can't hand on heart say that we achieved every single thing at that time frame, for reasons which I'll explain. As I mentioned, looking at this, there wasn't a great, well, at least to our knowledge at that stage, at the institutional central level, a great knowledge or tradition of research data management practice. And having looked at the funder requirements, some of the funder requirements are complex. The funder requirements in Horizon 2020 is no different. They're quite woolly. And when you start to present that to an academic audience, no better constituency to start picking holes in something and raising questions and of which you don't have the answer to. So some of the landscape of this is quite very difficult, and there's no one model of best practice in any of this. There was no one model you could say, okay, let's adopt this and we'll go forward with that. And even within the university itself, as I mentioned, there was no central common processes, systems or data capture for this across the university. So to a certain extent, at a central level at least, we were starting this from scratch. And also in this, when we start to, at the beginning of this process, raise awareness among academics, again, given the type of community that you're dealing with a lot of comments from staff saying, well, I work with industry, I'm not releasing any of my data, even if it's part funded, I'm not doing this, and my data is too confidential. So again, it starts, there's more barriers where we were struggling with ourselves when you start to arrive at some sort of solutions, when you start then to bring that out to the constituency of academia, barriers were immediately raised, and it kind of starts to slow the process. And within that, within Queen's as well, there was a concern stroke fear about the cost of this. How is the university going to actually come up with something credible and build the cost of this? There was even not least than 6 months ago, which we're starting to feel the effects of now, the government department in Belfast had cut funding for Queen's, so there was no kind of quick public money cost to pay for this. So again, it starts to build up the picture of when you look at this, yeah, it's all well and great, but when these sorts of pressures start to arise, things are certainly not straightforward. So what we kind of, to some extent, got a bit of a bind, and the certain experience with the previous speaker from London is that there's this kind of balance between raising awareness, making staff aware of the funded requirements, but at the same time, when you're going out advocating that you do this, you don't have all the answers. So in some ways that we were only able to provide certain types of information, but we had to hold back because we didn't have any answers. If academic staff was raising so many questions, we would look entirely foolish. So there was a difficulty in the communication for this, to making all staff aware of what to do. And again, I don't know if anyone's on the academic support side here. Very, very difficult community to communicate things with anyway. So this again just added to the difficulty. And as well, I work in the Research and Enterprise Directorate, which is in the research policy. In the middle of all this, there was the REF exercise, which for people who are not familiar with that, it can basically boil down to, it's a huge data collection exercise over a six-year period that you have to submit for external assessment. So myself and a lot of the staff I work with were involved in all of this. So again, added to the problems with that. However, some work has been ongoing, and certainly in the early years, that we contacted the Digital Creation Centre with Martin Donnelly, and I can confirm that Martin does exist. Although sometimes when we're chatting to him, he did feel like this godlike figure where he would come up with this voice to say, okay, you can do this, and it was able to help us. He was, to a certain extent, over the last couple of years, a voice from a godlike figure from the clouds for us. So there was a facility they have called Cario. It's a survey tool which we were able to use, and to try to get some understanding of what's going on. And through this survey, we had found that there was good pockets within the university, but there was a lack of awareness among staff about these requirements from funder councils and Horizon 2020 and so forth. Staff had been holding their data, but they weren't necessarily willing to share it. Some were actually very anti-sharing their data. Even reference to Martin's slide about the tree ring press issue, was that member of staff did not want to release that data because they wanted to make sure that they had every single publication from that data set blade dry before they're able to release it. So to some extent you can understand that. I mean, those publications out of that data set received huge citations, and it was furthering that individual's career. But how long is too long? How long is privileged access? So it's always a complicated one. And there's also that staff were afraid then, but also found, which is not surprising because the university was also concerned, with the financial sustainability of this. What also found from the research survey was that staff in the university had been holding information on a range of data sets, which is all fine. So there's data was been collected and stored in many places, which is okay. But we did have concerns with two of those bullet points. So the external hard drives and PCs, where staff who would, from certain schools, would have research money were buying their own boxes. Maybe some academic staff would be familiar with computers themselves, or have someone within their school or department who would be quite familiar, would start to set up their own systems, and would have all these locally, independent republics devolved. So that has been a concern. So it identified problems there. One issue we got from the survey, and it's very, very difficult to understand what is actually out there, that what the university holds. Queen's would be in the mid-range size between Cork and Edinburgh, with about 1,500 academic staff. So it's very, very hard to audit and to survey academic staff and to find out. And these are some of the answers we got back, was from tens of terabytes to I don't know a lot. I have many files. What a silly question. It was some of the, so it only gives us this piece of information. But overall, we certainly found that there was a willingness of staff that they did want more advice and training, and some staff had also wished to have special individual support for data catalog to help them manage their data certainly at a large project level, and they also wanted kind of storage space as well, which was useful. One thing that we have found over the last couple of years is that you can read all the information on websites and papers and reports and so forth, but it's by going to events like this that you learn the most. And I'm not saying we learn by doing it ourselves. We've been kind of learned by doing from other people. The Digital Creation Centre, which I'll outline first, they were almost our first protocol, and they were very helpful to us in terms of outlining what the requirements, how would be able to work with this. It's meant going to other networks and seminars, and Queen's is also part of the Pure User Group. We also have given more money to Elsevier, it is beneficial. There's a group of 24 universities in the UK have operate Pure, so it's quite a good community that you can work with, and they have regular meetings of which data is part of that. And then we've also went to trips to individual universities. Some universities have spent a large money in this. University of Bristol, for example, has spent money, and we have a large system in place. So we travelled over to Bristol to have a look to see what they were doing. Just very quickly in terms of the policy. So part of our plan was to develop our policy, and to some extent the policy isn't new. I mean, when you go and talk to researchers, most of them are kind of doing this type of work anyway. They are keeping their data. There are cases, obviously, of people holding information on their PCs or their own kind of boxes and so forth. But by and large, they are keeping this. But to some extent, the policy is just restating data management principles, which it's its core of their own business. And a lot of academic staff do that, and they do know the importance of keeping that. So we've set out those responsibilities at the institutional and researcher level, and we've put particular onus on the PI, the project lead, who is identified as the person to control. They can obviously delegate responsibilities, but ultimately they have responsibility for the research under their project. But obviously, in terms of the policy, it's the sharing data that is new. That there were pockets of staff have been sharing data for a long time, but it wouldn't be a broadly recognised thing. Interestingly, our policy went along. There was some debate. We had wished that all staff we could say to all staff, you need to comply with this. You need to complete a data management plan. You need to make a portion of your data open access. But when that went to committee at the university, it just fell down. It didn't wash. Our pro-vice chancellor said, look, there's no point in doing this. Staff will not listen to this unless they'll only do this unless they have to. So at our first step, our first iteration of our policy, which is published, says that you need to comply with your funder requirements on this, and that the university encourages other staff. So you can read that as much, but I mean, Martin Donnelly at the start did have a point to say we need to communicate the benefits of this, but in reality we have found that in most cases, if academic staff have to do it because the funder's going to cut their money, that is effectively what most of them will listen to. But we are saying, having the softer side, but we're not mandating all staff to do this. In terms of the infrastructure, what was an issue? Okay, what were we going to do to build the infrastructure? So the first thing was we had the Pure system, which is our current research information system. We weren't going to do anything that was going to duplicate that or move away from that. That effectively is our core research system. So something had to be built around that. You can see as well that from our survey and other types of information gathering that we tried to get, it's very, very difficult for us at this stage to know what storage requirements that the staff in our data repository will need. At this stage, we can honestly say that we don't know. We'll have guesses, but we don't know how long. Some some of the research funders say you need to keep your data archive for 10 years, but if someone touches it without 10 years, the 10 years gets extended for another 10 years. Very, very difficult for us to estimate at this stage. And we had a look at some external storage solutions, and some of the figures we got quoted were 200 terabytes, or sorry, £200 per terabyte per year for 10 years. But I thought it was if you were putting in just 10 terabytes. If you're prepared to put in more terabytes, up to 275, that figure went down to £89 per terabyte. But when you calculate those figures, they are quite substantive figures, and at this stage, the university is not prepared to go outside and pay that money. So our solution for the short to medium term, at least, is to buy is to go down the in-house route, and to buy a 2 petabyte storage solution, of which we're going to break down into 3 tiers, much like some of the other presenters here. So tier 1 is your archive, or your active project data. Tier 2 is what the data you're going to make to be publicly available, and tier 3 will be your archive, your archive data, and the least researcher is going to get access to this. So to sum this up, we're effectively buying our own kit, and we're going to manage this ourselves for the time being. And effectively, this is what our data management framework looks like, where you have the PI, and tier 1 is that during the life of their project, we're just asking them for some basic metadata of what they're holding. And then at the end of the project, or when they finish that particular data set, they can decide to put that into tier 3, which is the archive. And again, we'll transfer some of that basic metadata. We don't need to hold an awful lot of metadata for archive data. And for tier 2, which will be the open data, we are using the pure. It's going to link to the pure metadata page within our pure system, which is linked to our research portal, which is the public face of our institutional repository. We also have staff who have been doing this for a long time, and notwithstanding the funder requirements, and they are putting this into subject repositories, and we've undertaken a list, and there are hundreds of subject repositories out there. So in many ways, we'll be encouraging staff to put data in those subject repositories as well. The only thing is that if they upload information into the subject repository, they'll upload their metadata here. They'll be asked to do this when they import this to the subject repository. Unfortunately, we're going to ask them also to put that metadata into Pure, so they're going to have to create the 2 metadata. Maybe we'll have staff to do that for them, but because basically what we wish to have is a catalogue of all the open data held within our system, whether it's stored internally or stored externally. So in effect, there will be a link. There will be open access available within our research portal there at the top. So this is effectively what the pure research data set looks like. Well, just a portion of it anyway, is that within here that you can create a DOI within that. For certain small portions of data, you will be able to upload it. If not, we'll be able to add links which will link off to our tier 2 data. And this is what the public face of it looks like, is in terms of the research data archive within the research repository in Queen's. And when you click on one of those data sets, this is what it looks like. And within here, there's obviously, within the Pure system, there's also the opportunity to create links to the project and to the actual publication. So even if anyone undertakes a search for the publication or for the project, they'll in turn find the associated link to that research data. And the link at the bottom there will take them to the actual research data set. So just a few final thoughts. I mean, what we have done is not, I'm not saying it's the most perfect, comprehensive, everlasting solution to this problem. Certainly on the infrastructure side, with our internal 2 petabyte solution, we estimate we'll maybe perhaps get 2 to 4 years life out of this, and then we'll rethink again. So there are pros and cons about the commercial products versus the in-house solution. Commercial products are obviously expensive, but within that you're paying money for storage, for extra security, for the creation of this data as well. That's something that commercial products will be able to take care of. Where we'll have to undertake a lot of work internally to say if staff are uploading searching data on Excel or whatever, will that be able to, when Excel changes 10 years down the line, will that still be readable? So it's something that we'll need to keep a very close eye on. So there are pros and cons, but certainly we're adopting the kind of in-house incremental approach for now, simply because we think that in 2 to 4 years' time, we will have more knowledge of what perspectives that we need, how much data we need, and then we can use that information then to go back to out to market again and kind of argue for costs. We're certainly, in some of the cost quotations we have, some of them were a bit off the cuff, said, okay, but we're prepared to negotiate. We don't really have enough information now to negotiate with external suppliers, but we will have in 2 to 4 years' time. We're also have a challenge in the university on FTE. We have a number of staff, including myself here, doing this as part of their job, but we had applied for 2 FTE posts 6 months ago, which were turned down given the economic conditions. We do hope to get another 0.5 individual, and certainly, again, kind of running with the 0.5 and support with other staff who are working with this. Again, we think in 2 to 3 years' time, we'll have more information. We'll be down the road a bit further, and then we can expand as appropriate. And we'll also intend to develop a more broader organizational approach. Now, just to cite this, I was at a presentation, one of the Digital Creation Centre's presentation. So this isn't my diagram, but I saw it and I thought it was very good. But what I can say is I was going to adopt how we're working for this in Queen's, but given that these slides are going public, I didn't want to. So what, you can obviously, you can read this yourself, obviously, when you have the research office and IT services and the library all kind of working in chain. At the present, our red circle here with our orange circle of the library would be very, very small. That's how it would look, and we would hope that over time we would have that the library services would start to become more involved in this in the creation exercise. And maybe staff in the library could argue that the little purple wheel is where I work hasn't been spinning fast enough to make IT spin fast enough to make the library spin fast enough and grow. But again, it's this issue of how all those 3 parts work together. Who should be spinning the wheel to make the others turn? But I think this is a kind of a neat way, and certainly where the research office and IT service and library are spinning. So I think this is what we foresee to happen again over the next 2 years or so. And effectively, what we'll end up in a system as this. Again, reference to the DMP online, we have found that very useful, and what we had hoped to do is to build that into our applications and award system. So there's automatic flags when there's an application comes in, that whether the funder asks for it or not, that a member of staff will be able to fill one in, and perhaps a more detailed one at the award stage, that then this would be fed into the pure system. And during then you would follow on to the active data and to the other parts, ultimately publishing all this on our research portal. I think that the data management and the DMP online is very, very useful, because if we get all our staff to fill this in the perfect way, it'll give us a bit more of an understanding of what we need for tiers 1, 2, and 3. So it'll be a good kind of forward-thinking way or a good way of getting information as to what's going ahead. So we'd hope to intend to build that in over the next number of months as well. And that's that. Thank you.
Thank Thank you, Jonathan. It's fantastic to see how the various wheels are spinning.
Or not.
Do we have a question for Jonathan at this stage? You'll be around in the afternoon.
Yes.
Anyway. Yeah. Okay. Now, lunch has arrived, but you're not quite off the hook yet, I'm afraid. There is a question that we want to ask somewhere here. So in your packs, there are Post-its. So what we'd like you to do, I don't know how this is going to work out, but hopefully it will. Let's see. We're going to just pose a question.